Shalom Aleichem, Mishpachim. We are continuing with the Tanya. I'm trying to catch up. Currently, I fell behind because I was reading the leap years, and we're not in a leap year. We're not in those readings in the Tanya. We are in the regular year Tanya readings. So I am in the 30th, currently in the 30th of Kislev in the Tanya, and yeah, I'll catch up definitely. It's not that hard. I just have to read today's and I mean yesterday's and today's, which is the first of Tevet. So Tanya is okay. 30th of Kislev over here, which is December 31st. And this is Tanya. All right, let us begin. Overview of chapter 5. The union of one's soul and with God via Torah study is unique and unparalleled. For when one comprehends something intellectually, the mind wraps itself around the subject matter and is simultaneously within that conceptual arena. This two-dimensional unification is exceptional. Hence, the advantage of Torah study over other mitzvos. In today's lesson, there is no unity as profound as the one created between a human mind and divine intellect when Torah is studied. All right, beginning chapter 5. Tanya, Likkutei Amarim. At the conclusion of the previous chapter, the Alter Rebbe depicted the study of Torah as a royal embrace. When one studies Torah, his intellect embraces and encompasses the divine will and wisdom, and thus he embraces the King of Kings himself, since he and his wisdom are one. In turn, the King, God's will and wisdom, embraces the mind of the Torah student. But while it is readily understood that the mind can be described as embracing the Torah knowledge that it absorbs, the meaning of Torah's embracing one's intellect is unclear. In chapter 5, the Alter Rebbe clarifies this point. He does so by elucidating the term grasp, used in the statement by Elijah, quoted in the previous chapter, that no thought can grasp God except by way of grasping the Torah. Primarily, however, this chapter aims to show how Torah study is superior to all other mitzvot. Not only is one encompassed by God's will when he studies the Torah, as when he performs any mitzvah, but furthermore, he embraces God by understanding his wisdom as set forth in Torah. A further explanation to more fully elucidate the expression tefisa, to grasp, in the words of Elijah, no thought can grasp you. When any intellect perceives and understands some intellectual subject, the mind grasps that subject and encompasses it. And the subject is grasped and encompassed by, and is clothed within the intellect that understood and perceived it. The subject, which is now within the human intellect, is surrounded and encompassed by that intellect, much as a material object is surrounded by the hand that grasps it. But the subject can be said to be within the mind only once the mind has fully understood it, as indicated also by the Alter Rebbe's use of the past tense, the intellect that understood and perceived it. Before mastering the subject, however, while the mind is engaged in analyzing its details, the subject is still above the mind, and the relationship between them is the reverse. The mind is within the subject and is encompassed by it. In the Alter Rebbe's words, also the intellect is clothed within the subject at the time of intellectual comprehension and grasping. Thus, in an act of understanding an idea, the mind both encompasses the concept and is encompassed by it, and this is the significance of the term grasping used above. The Rebbe notes, the process of understanding an idea is as follows. At first, one grasps the idea of concept in a general way, and at that time his intellect encompasses the subject. Afterwards, one begins to dissect the general idea through analysis and argument, at which time the subject encompasses his intellect. When he finishes dissecting and analyzing, once he has mastered the concept thoroughly in the Rebbe's words, the intellect understood and perceived it. His intellect, once again, encompasses the subject. When, for example, one understands and comprehends a particular halakha in the Mishnah or Gemara clearly and thoroughly through strenuous application of his mind, his intellect grasps and encompasses that halakha, and his intellect is also clothed in it at that time when he strives to understand it. Now, this halakha is the wisdom and will of God. The rationale underlying the halakha is God's wisdom, and the ruling itself is God's will, as mentioned in chapter 4. It so arose in his will that if, for example, Reuven would claim thus, and Shimon thus, such and such should be the verdict between them, even if it never did nor ever will come to pass that litigation occur over these arguments and claims. Thus, were the purpose of Torah study only to learn how to practice its laws, in this case, how to resolve this dispute, then the study of such a law would indeed serve no purpose. In fact, however, there is great value in studying even such a halacha, for thereby one knows God's will and wisdom, and attains himself to it, as the Alter Rebbe continues. Yet, since it arose thus in God's will and wisdom, that if one person would claim this way and the other that way, the verdict be such and such. Therefore, when one knows and comprehends this verdict as a halakha set forth in the Mishnah or Gemara or Paskim, the halachic codifiers, if one arrives at the identical verdict on the basis of any other legal system, this verdict represents human knowledge, not divine wisdom. If, however, he derives the ruling from Torah, he then actually comprehends and grasps the will of wisdom and God, whom no thought can grasp, nor can any thought grasp his will and wisdom, except when they, God's will and wisdom, clothe themselves in the halachot set before us. This is one facet of understanding Torah, namely that thereby one's intellect encompasses the divine will and wisdom. Furthermore, his intellect is also clothed with them, within the divine will and wisdom contained in Torah. His mind is encompassed by them. Now, this is a most wonderful unity. In the physical realm, there is no unity similar or parallel to it, of two things as disappropriate as human intellect and Torah, God's intellect, that they should actually become one and united from every side and angle. The takeaway: when hugging a king, one is not disturbed that the king is dressed in clothing. Don't be confused by a commandment looking mundane and ungodly. This is his will. All right, and that is